In today's podcast, I want to talk about one of my biggest pet peeves, and that is people giving up on themselves way too early. Give it a listen. Welcome to the Intentional Success Podcast, where we unpack the top strategies, explore business trends, and drill down into best practices to help your live events production business grow and scale on purpose. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. So when you start talking about profit, and we always end up there, right? I say profit on every single podcast because it matters. If you're not making a profit, why are we bothering to do all of this? You know, you could just go work for somebody else, get a paycheck, right? Being a W-2 employee for somebody else is a lot easier, and they can yell at you about profit, and then you just do your job. But I'm yelling at you about profit, and it is your job, and it's a lot of stress, and I want to try and reduce that stress because it shouldn't be so hard, right? The math for profit is pretty darn simple, but the mindset about profit is very difficult. The human brain does things with information that just, well, it boggles the mind, doesn't it? So, profit. Too many people think that profit comes from compromise. Oh, we could make more money, but we'd have to compromise on the quality of our work, or we'd have to buy less equipment, or we'd have to have, fewer employees and have to trust ourselves to freelancers that we don't know, and all these excuses. And that profit is somehow this magical formula that doesn't exist because you have to give things up to make a profit. And people who make a profit are clearly doing something immoral, illegal, wrong. They're cutting corners. They're not paying folks. They're making people stay in crappy hotels. There's a lot of brain trash that goes on when we talk about profit. When we see people doing well and we're not doing well ourselves, and we think we've done everything we can. Spoiler alert, you haven't done everything that you can. So, and it's okay. There's no shame in not knowing something. However, if we can teach you something and you choose not to use it, then not being profitable is a choice. And eventually people will quit teaching you and they'll give up on you and they'll just let you live your life. Not everybody is prepared to make a profit. So what I want to talk about is exactly the opposite of what a lot of people believe. People believe that if I'm making money, I must be doing something wrong. I'm cutting corners. I'm not hiring the right people. I'm not buying the right equipment. And in fact, the truth is exactly the opposite. The things that will help you make a profit are exactly the things that you think you can't do because you're not making enough profit as it is right now. And in fact, these are things that you should have done, and if you understood them and you committed to them, the profit would indeed follow. Everybody's version of what good work is varies. Fortunately, every customer's perception of good work also varies. There's always a perfect match for you, right? So finding that perfect match is a lot of what we're trying to do. We're trying to fit a lot of disparate pieces together in order to find our personal profit formula. But we've got to get rid of the head trash. One of the big head trashes that I hear quite frequently is that we live in a world of razor thin margins. I went to Infocom last month, ran into a bunch of people. You get 2 or 3 folks together, they all say the same thing. Oh, labor costs are out of control. Our margins are razor thin. You wouldn't believe how low we had to quote in order to win this job, over and over and over again. When in fact, I know these guys own second homes. They fly first class. They're living very well. The fact of the matter is, they can make money and they could probably make more money, but the excuses they have for not making more money are not valid. We do not live in a world of razor thin margins. You can choose whether to accept money or not. You choose the margin you accept. Right? You are not the victim of margins. Margins are self-inflicted. So if you're living on razor-thin margins, go look in a mirror because that's where they're coming from. So there's no such things as razor-thin margins. There's just bad math. And we inflict a lot of bad math on ourselves. You can make more money. You're going to have to turn down work, or you will have work that doesn't come your way because of your dedication to making a profit. That's okay. Most of you could stand to shrink your businesses by 30% and make more money. And matter of fact, most of you would like to do that, wouldn't you? But you don't know how. Number one, get rid of the head trash. There are no such thing as razor thin margins. There's only bad math. Low margins are a self-inflicted wound. You have control over this. What buyers want to buy is their problem, right? If you don't want to sell to them at the margins that they are offering you, or you think you're being offered, walk away. Because if you accept that margin, it's no longer razor thin. It's yours. You own it. You chose it. Live with it. A lot of people also think that profit doesn't matter, or people think that profit is not achievable in an election year. And I don't know why this is. There's a certain amount of insecurity in a presidential election year in the US because there's going to be a change of regimes, change of policies. A new party may come to power, and that's going to affect economic policy, in the country. And that makes buyers a little bit insecure. Sometimes big corporations will hold back to wait and see what happens. But the fact is, that's pretty rare. They are also using it as an excuse. So when somebody says, well, it's an election year, we don't want to take that risk. The election year is not the risk they're concerned about. They just need an excuse to reduce risk, and they've chosen to call it an election year. And if you're really objective about this, if you look at presidential election years in the US, we've been in a presidential election year for the past 12 years straight. It has been nonstop presidential. As soon as one election ends, the next one starts. There is no break. We live in a nonstop cycle of election years. We need to quit using this as an excuse. There is money to be made all the time. There is revenue all the time. Most of the people I'm talking to have more revenue than they know what to do with, but they're still complaining about their margins. Again, self-inflicted wound. Election year is a very poor excuse for how your business is doing. Customers aren't buying. It's an election year. That says more about you than it does about your buyers, right? Another thing I want to remember, this business isn't as tough as we think it is. Oh, Tom, how can you say that? We work tremendous hours. We have to travel. We do risky things. Yes, all of that is true. But that's pretty much true of everybody's business. Everybody's business is tough. There are much tougher businesses than what we do, right? I mean, I know it sounds crass, but I say this from time to time, and I usually regret it. We're in an industry that if something goes wrong, babies don't typically die. People don't die because we screwed up. This is not a difficult industry, right? It is not that hard to do good work, right? But when we start telling ourselves it is, we give ourselves an excuse for doing poor work. We give ourselves an excuse for failure. Oh man, we're in a tough industry. You know what? If you're not good at it, selling hamburgers is a tough industry, right? Everybody wants a hamburger. I could eat a hamburger. I could kill a hamburger right now. It's not that tough of an industry. How hard is it to make a good burger, right? If somebody shows up at your restaurant and they want a burger, what's the shortest path it takes to get them a delicious burger into their hands? That's all you have to do. Our industry is not that tough, and we need to quit acting like it is. And we project that to our clients. If we act like it's tough, they're going, oh, these guys think this is really hard. Well, who would you rather deal with? Somebody who thinks this is hard or somebody who thinks this is easy and we do this all the time? I mean, yeah, there's buyers out there who want you to act like this is overly complicated. They want to think their jobs are very difficult to pull off, which usually means that they are, right? But again, we don't have to do business with them. We can do business with people who know this can be easy and it should be easy and it should be fun. So quit saying that our business, we're in a tough industry. We're in a fun industry. This is a lot of fun if you do it right. It's a tough industry if you do it wrong. And the same is true of every other industry that we face. I mean, You see it all the time in the ballroom, right? You're listening to the CEO speak to the troops, at the meeting that you're doing audio and video for. What are they saying? Oh my gosh, it's so hard to make money this year. Our margins are razor thin. The competition is killing us. It's an election year. Who are they kidding? They just suck at their job, right? Sometimes we do suck at our jobs, and you get permission to fix yourself. Here's 3 ways you can fix yourself. So there's a couple of rules about making a profit that we need to remind ourselves when we start feeling despondent about it. 1, we set the price, which means we set the margin, right? If you know what stuff is worth, there's no reason you can't make a profit, right? You got to sell it for what it's worth. It doesn't mean you have to sell everything. Number 2, you have to sell to people that appreciate you, right? Revenue is not what you're after. You're after an honest thank you. You're after a handshake. These are the things that we want. The profit's already baked in. I want profit with a handshake, right? A sincere thank you and a handshake. That's what I want. So you've got to figure out how to get that goal crystal clear in your mind. Who you do business with really, really does matter. And if you stop settling on who you do business with, you will find that your profits are going to soar. And the third thing, and I say this all the time, but that doesn't mean it's self-evident, you got to keep your overhead as low as possible. Creating overhead to make life easier in case you do work is where most businesses fail. They build it. If you build it, they will come. It doesn't work, right? Look at your output. Look at your deliverable. You only need enough overhead to make sure your deliverable is consistently delivered at a fair margin. Everything else is about turning down business, right? If you can meet your overhead plus profit, you're doing great. If you're adding overhead because you're not making enough profit, give me a call. There's something dramatically wrong going on in your business. If you're having to run out and buy more gear so that you can make a better profit, you don't understand the math of your industry. You're treating this business like it's hard, and we need to stop. So stop settling on too little profit. If you have a bad profit year, identify what went wrong, fix it. Fix it as quickly as possible, because 1 year will turn into 2 years, which will turn into a lifetime. And as somebody who has looked at businesses that started 30 and 40 years ago, I can always pinpoint the moment they stopped settling on too little profit. And I see the change, and I can tell you exactly what they did. And it was they added too many employees to make life easier to book shows. They bought too much gear to make it easier to book shows. They added too many processes because it looked like they were doing better shows that would ensure better outcomes. And the fact, none of those things actually worked. Okay? Those weren't the problem. The problem was always up here in the mind, in the mindset. So I'm sure I'll talk more about this in future podcasts, but this is what was on my mind today. And if you're struggling to figure out what your relationship with profit is and find the shortest path to recovery, I'm happy to help. Let's have a conversation. It's absolutely free. Give me an understanding where you are. I'll help do the diagnosis. I'll give you some prescriptive tips and give you an opportunity to do it yourself, because for many of you, that's what's important to you. But if you want help so you can do it faster, I'd be happy to talk to you about that as well. First thing is first, decide that you're worth the money. I hope I get to talk to you soon. If you want to find out more about today's episode, go to trstimson.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes, related links, and tons of other valuable resources. If you haven't already subscribed to the Intentional Success Podcast, please do so, and I'd greatly appreciate if you would rate and review the show. Also, if you think you might be a good fit to work together or want more information about the Stimson Group, I'd love to hear from you. Visit trstimson.com for more information.